Alright, and we're back. So guess what? I lied! We're not quite ready to animate the ball yet. We just have a couple of things we need to do. Well, we're going to animate. We're finished. We're finished rigging the ball, which is good. But we do need a background, and we also need a shadow. So let's start with our shadow first. So we have our ball here, but I'm going to say Control H to create a new composite node, and I'll set this to pass through as well, and I'll call this ground shad comp 1, ground shad comp 1 pass through. Okay, so here's our ground shadow comp, and then I'll just create a drawing layer by saying Control R, and I'll call this ground shad 1. Okay, ground shad 1, and I'll plug this into my ground shad comp. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so for a shadow, I'll just go to my ellipse tool, and I already set up my color for it. Okay, so I set up my cutter, my color for it. So ground shad is there, and I'm on my ellipse tool, and I'll just go to color art here, and I'll go to tool properties, and I'll just have autofill turned on, and I'll just click and drag an ellipse that's not too deep and not too shallow, just something that looks, that it would look like it would be about high noon lighting, like that. Okay, and I can go to Control S, and I can grab the line work on the outside like this and just get rid of that. Okay, so I've got my shadow here. Okay, and I just did that on my color art. That's fine. In this case, that's fine. Okay, so ground shadow. And of course I want to take my ground shadow, and I want to go into the options box of it, and under transformation I want to set my embedded pivot on parent peg. Okay, and then I'm going to put this under a controller object, a peg. Okay, so I'll select it, and I'll say Control P. I noticed in the last video I said Shift P. That is not the hotkey for for pegs, so I apologize about that. I'll put a little note in the last video. I'll put a little disclaimer note in the bottom correcting that. So Control P is to parent a peg. A parent you're drawing under a peg. Okay, so I have my peg here, ground shad 1P, and I'll rename that to ground shad P underscore 1, just to be consistent with my naming. Alright, so with my peg selected, I will say Shift T, because in the last video I was saying Control T to go to your transform tool. It is not Control T, it is Shift T. So Shift T to go to my transform tool over here, and I want to reposition my pivot using my handy animation advanced animation tools, and I'll just put it at the center of my ground shadow. Okay, so that's there, and I'll say Shift T again to test that out, and that's great. Wonderful. Okay, so that's there, and then I also need to be able to block this into my scene, so I'll take this and say Control P again to give it a God node. So if I click in here and I say a ground shad master P1. Okay. And I want to reposition its pivot as well to be at the center. Just like that. Okay. And that's good right there. Okay. Very good. Okay. And actually, sorry, the ground shed pivot here, that naming needs to be changed. We need to change this to ground shed move P1 so that it indicates that it's a movement pivot. So we're going to animate on that. Okay. And then what I can do is I can take this, and I'm actually going to put the ground shadow comp just to the right of my ball. I want my ball comp to be on top of my ground shadow comp. So the ball comp is going to be to the left, and the ground shadow is going to be to the right of it. Okay. Okay. And I can take my master peg. With my master peg, I can kind of move it out of the way a little bit. All right. And in the timeline view, I can collapse this stuff. So I'll collapse my ground shadow, and I'll collapse my ball. Okay. So we're nice and organized. Very good. And I'll do a save. So save as, and I'll call this 04. Very good. Staying nice and organized, as always, being good animators. Right. Okay, and one more thing that I need is a background. Okay, so have a nice background in your scene. So let's add another comp, so Control H. So I have another composite here. I will rename this. I will call this BG Comp 1. I will set this to pass through. Okay. And then let's go ahead and add a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to add is a color card. So an easy way to add a color card to your scene is you can come over to your timeline, and this little plus sign here, you could say add layers, and I'll just click that and say color card. So there's a white card. Okay, and if I can't see my newly created asset in my node view, I can hit the, if I have it selected in my timeline or selected on the screen, I can actually hit the O key in my node view. So say I have my color card selected here, but I say, oh no, I can't. Where is it in my node view? Well, if I'm over in my node view with my mouse, I can say O, the O key, and it'll find the color card. So my color card is way over here, and we made it very clear that we don't want to have crisscrossing wires in our scene. You will be graded on that, so remember. So I'm going to grab my color card and pull it all the way over to this side, and I'm actually going to unplug my color card from my comp altogether, because I want that to go into my background comp. So I don't want it in my main comp. I want my color card to go into my BG comp. So I'll put that in there. Okay. And now I also want to have a little bit of, I'm going to create a little bit of line work. Why not? We'll create a little, nice little drawing on my background. So I'll say Control R to create a drawing layer, and I'll say BG Art 1. Okay. And okay. So BG Art 1. And that's fine. And I'll plug this into the leftmost side of my BG comp, because I'm going to draw on this, and I'll just grab the line tool and color. I'll create a new color. I'll say BG line. Why not? Okay, and I'll make that black. Nice strong black. Okay, and I'll just shift click and drag something into my scene, maybe. Yeah, something like this. And shift click. Shift click. Yeah, something like that. Alright, and that was on my BG art layer. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll pipe this into the rightmost side of my main comp. Okay, and then my anim drawing layer, I want it to be above my background. Okay, so I'll move my background over here. Okay. And I've got my anim layer, right? My anim drawing layer. Remember this? I'm going to use it for my rough animation. So I want it to be above my background. Okay, which means it needs to be to the left of it. Okay. All right. So we are getting organized. Again, I'm just going to do a little house cleaning here. Keep organized with your nodes. Don't get all unruly on me now. You guys are doing so good. Okay, but let's just clean up our scene a little bit so that everything is nice and orderly. Okay, very good. And I'll do another save. Why not? Why not, right? Okay. So my background does not need to be rigged, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. My anim drawing layer doesn't need any pegs on it. All we need pegs on are our ground shadow, because it's going to be animated, and our ball. Okay. So we're looking good. All right. So now we can start to animate. Okay. So let's go in and move some things around. So I'm going to grab my ball master peg, and I'll say Shift T to go into the transform tool, because that's the tool that we use to animate from, and I'm just going to pull my ball over here. Okay, and I'll also go over to my ground shadow master peg, and I'll pull my shadow over here too. Okay, yeah, that'll be fine, something like that. Okay, great. So I'm going to make my scene view much bigger. And I'm going to drag my node view over here, because I don't really need my node view right now. What I need are my animation layer. Okay. One thing I will do though, is I'm going to create so I have an animation layer for drawing, which is great. Let me grab my tablet pen here, and I'll go to my brush tool. Just let me get a little bit set up here. So I'll grab my brush tool, and if I'm on my anim layer here, go to my animation frame. I'm going to animate on this layer, but I'm going to make another drawing layer, so you can create, you know, layers in the timeline view again by going to the plus symbol. So I'm going to click that. I'll create another drawing layer, and I'm going to call this my I'll just call it chart. Okay. All right. That's fine. So chart. Okay. So, you know, I'll have a layer that I put my timing chart on, and then I'll have my animation layer here. So let's start off with a simple animation test, shall we? Come in and, you know, make my scene bigger like this, and, you know, why don't we something like that. Okay. So animation here. I'm on frame 1. Oh, and my background. My BG art, I want to extend this BG art 1, so I need to extend that layer so you can see it's not showing after frame 1. So what I'm going to do, let's go to frame so on frame 60. Let's go to, so I'm going to zoom out. In case you didn't know, zooming in the timeline view, should probably do a little demo in the timeline view. So this is my timeline. You can zoom in the timeline view by hitting 2 and 1. Okay. You have frame ranges here, so start, stop. I'm going to go to, so if you can slide your frames here, so this is what frame you're on, so I can say if I want to go to frame 10, it'll take me to frame 10. If I want to go to frame 20, it'll take me to frame 20. Then I can select frame ranges this way by telling it to, you know, to cycle my cycle frames. I can say I want it to play from frame 20, or do I want it to play from frame 1? I'll say frame 1 for now. I can also drag this red marker here allows you to, this is how much you can see on your timeline. So I'm going to go to frame, let's say 120, and give myself a little more space. So my BG art layer, I'll click frame 120 here, and then to extend my BG art exposure to frame 120, I'll just hit F5, making sure that my BG art is selected. Right, I'll just select that frame. I'll hit F5, and that will extend English, extend my artwork to frame 120. So that'll give me lots of room to work. Okay, and so let's go ahead now and start doing some rough animation. So I want you to animate, do rough animation. Okay, so let's go into our tool properties, and I'm going to select, you know, select like a small brush, like 1. I like to work really loose, so a really light pencil line. I'm that kind of an animator. I am that. that kind of an animator, whatever kind that is. The simple kind. The the humble kind. Okay. So we're on frame 1 here. So I'm going to create an exposure on frame 1 by hitting, or it's kind of the same as putting a fresh cell on, or a fresh piece of paper on your light table. So I'm going to grab a fresh piece of paper and put it down by saying Shift Alt R, and you'll see that puts a frame. It's empty. I haven't drawn anything on my piece of paper, but that's the way I can put an exposure on frame 1. And so I'll go ahead. So let's just let's do a simple. Let's start with a simple bouncing ball, okay? Shall we? Let's start simple. So I'll have a ball, maybe up here, right? Something like that. Making sure to just kind of construct my ball dimensionally with some nice volume, right? Good drawing practices. Okay, so there's my first, my lovely ball drawing. So that's on, that's drawing 1. Okay, and right now, okay, so animating. Okay, really. Oh, and let's do this on our I'm going to delete that frame. I'll do this again. Control R. Okay, I'll create another. So let's do this on our line art layer, just for best practices. So I'll draw my sphere again. Draw my ball. Okay, got my ball. Okay, so drawing dimensionally. So, as I was about to mention, these drawings that I'm going to do now, these are my storytelling keys, okay? And I can't stress this enough, the workflow of animating a scene, right? A lot of people, they forget this. But I'm only focusing on the story, okay? I'm not thinking about timing. I'm not thinking about spacing. I'm thinking purely story. Okay, so the story is we're going to have a ball that drops and begins to bounce. Alright, so my ball is up in the air, and then it's going to drop down and it's going to hit the ground. Okay, so I could say that the major event that's happening again is the ball is going to hit the ground. So that's my second storytelling drawing. So let's put another frame here. Okay, and and again, I did that by saying, I'll do that again. I did that by Shift Alt R is placing a new exposure, or I like to think of it as a new sheet of paper. Okay. So my second and let's turn on our light table. So we can come over here, or onion skinning rather. So this is my onion skinning button that I can toggle. You can also toggle that on and off by hitting Alt and O. So Alt O is onion skin. So I turned on my onion skin. There's my first drawing. And I'll put my second drawing down here. We'll do a nice squash. Okay, so that ball is going to hit. Ball's going to hit, and it's going to squash nicely. Maybe I'll do that again. So something like that. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so I got my ball. My ball is hitting ground. It's squashing. Just trying to, making sure I'm just getting those volumes looking on point, right? Okay, so okay, okay, and then my third drawing. I mean, really, I can just copy and paste my third drawing, because my third drawing, my third storytelling key is the ball comes back up. So when the ball is up here, it bounces and then it comes back up. Okay. All right. So I've got my first key, and I've got my second key, and I've got my third key. So now, if I wanted to have this cycle, we could say, all right, well, that's what's happening. So now I want to think about timing. Okay, so timing, let's just do a save. Timing is at what point in time do I want my key drawings to hit, or my key actions to happen? That's timing. Okay. Timing is a performance attribute. Okay. So I'm going to say I want my contact position, which is this, my contact drawing, to land, I would say, like, you know, and you can, a good practice that you can use your timeline, you can use a stopwatch, but like, you can, you know, use your fingers and snap your fingers. When I'm animating, I'm always, when I'm timing things out, I'll use, like, literally snap my fingers. So if I'm imagining this ball bouncing on the screen, and I'm saying to myself, well, how long do I want the time from it to drop and hit the ground to be? I'm going to be like, okay, I'll imagine it, and it's like, is that too fast? No, you know, so I'm snapping my fingers. I should probably do this, you know, but I'll snap my fingers and I'll use the timeline. So do, right? So I'm not even looking at what's happening on screen, because I'm kind of really just imagining it in my head, not looking, because these are, you know, there's no time here. So right? So I'm going to say, if I'm working on twos, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 frames should be enough. So if I'm on frame 9, I'm going to say, give or take, I want my contact position to hit on frame 9. Okay, so I've timed that. Okay, and you know, when you're dragging frames around on here, you're going to get some stuff. You're going to get some, it's going to extend the exposure. I don't want to extend these, so I'll just delete these. So drawing 1 on frame 1. I'm going to put drawing 2 on frame 9, because that's where I'm feeling like I want my contact position to be. Okay, and then I'm gonna put my other drawing on frame 17, I believe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that's on 2s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and on 2s. I want to make sure I'm working on 2s. Okay. All right. So let's put our time, our playback to stop at frame 17. So we'll say stop 17. So that's just going to play that back. Okay, and then I can say cycle. Okay, so that's the loop button, and then I'll say play. Yeah, that feels good, right? Feeling that, like, doom, 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 as I'm snapping my fingers, right? Timing. Okay, so that timing, that feels pretty good to me. I like that. Okay, so we figured out our timing. Timing is done. Now what's our spacing gonna be? Well, you know, I could have. Oh, just a minute. I've got a little friend. Oh. Okay, so that's my cat. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. I've got to go and feed my cat. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, sweetie, come on. Come on. Come on. Supper time. Come on. All right, I'm back. I literally couldn't have timed that any better. Oh my gosh. Cats, they need their food, that is for sure. Now, just 1 second. Seem to have misplaced my tablet pen. I don't know where it went. All right. Yeah, as I was saying, couldn't have timed that any better. Okay, so cats, you know, they need to be fed too. She is my one and only love. That sounds so lonely. Oh my gosh. Hey, it's all right. We can love our animals, right? All right, so that feels good. And okay. So we have our timing established, but what about our spacing? Well, if I want my ball to sort of cushion in, I want my ball to cushion into the top positions. Okay, it's gonna cushion in and it's gonna cushion into the top position, you know, because as it comes up, boing, you know, boing, right? So I want my widest spacing to be at the bottom of the bottom of the drop, and the tightest spacing to be at the top. Okay, so we can consider. So let's go ahead and let's draw a timing chart. So if I have my, I'm going to go to my chart layer here, and I'll make my pencil a little bit bigger. Yeah. So if I have my timing chart here. I'm drawing on my chart layer, right? Yeah, okay. So here's my timing chart. I'll just draw a chart here. So those of you who are not familiar with timing charts, they're actually supposed to be called in-between charts. I don't know, I think in-between chart is a little bit better, because really that's what you're describing, is the spacing with your in-between. So some people call them timing charts, some people call them spacing charts. And as long as you understand it's to represent the spacing between your keys and breakdowns, that's all you need to know. So we're on our chart layer, okay, and so I'm gonna say, so I've got a key drawing on frame 1. Okay, so on my chart layer, I'm gonna say I've got a key drawing on frame 1. Okay, and I've got a key drawing, or you could call it a breakdown, but I've got a key drawing on frame 9. Okay, so I have a key on frame 1 and a key on frame 9, and you're going to circle your keyframes. Okay, so you circle your keyframes like this. Alright, let's see if I can. I have a tablet at home. I don't have a Cintiq. Like, it's literally a tablet. It's actually a Wacom tablet. Cintiq. It's a tablet 4, or a Wacom 4 tablet. It's old. So yeah, but anyway, you'll have to excuse my ugly writing. So I have frame 1 I have a key, and frame 9 I have a key. And what I want to do from frame 9 to frame 1 is I want to ease into frame 1. Okay, so if I'm going to ease into frame 1, I'm going to do that on halves. So so I'm going to say I'm going to have drawing 7 here. Okay, and which 7 would be, you could call that a breakdown. And then I'll have, and I'm doing this on halves. Okay, I'm just going to use half spacing because I want a nice gradual. Okay, and then this is going to be drawing 5, or frame 5, sorry, not drawing 5, frame 5. And then in between that, I'll have 3. Okay. So 1. Okay. All right. And then here, from here to here, I'll have another timing chart. And I think I might turn off onion skinning for now because that's going to confuse me. Another timing or spacing chart or whatever. So this is going to be frame 9, and then we're going to be at frame 17. Okay, so we got a key. We have a key there. Okay, so frame 9, frame 17, and half spacing from frame 9 to 17, from frame 9 to 17. Okay, I want to cushion into frame 17, so that means I'm gonna have my widest spacing after frame 9. I'm gonna cushion in. I have another drawing here, so 9. This will be 11, which you could call a breakdown if you wanted. Okay, so I'm going to underline my breakdown. Then we'll have 13, and then 15. Okay. Okay, so we're cushioning out of 1 as it drops, and then dropping to frame 9, and then we're coming into, we're going to hit on frame 9, and it's going to be wide spacing until we come up and cushion into 17. Okay, so you put your timing charts on your key drawings. So my key drawing is here, or your key, call it keyframe. So okay, so remember, we're gonna ease out of 1, and it's gonna hit, so we're easing out. And timing charts are generally read from top to bottom. Okay, so we're reading from here to here. They're drawn and read from top to bottom. And then I'm gonna, okay, and then we're gonna hit on frame 9 and bounce back up. Okay. All right, so we've got our key, and you could consider this a breakdown. You might, but you could also call it a key. And the definitions of each drawing that you have will actually change as you're breaking down the animation. So you might start with storytelling keys, and some of those storytelling keys you might make breakdowns, and you know, because it all really just depends on the use of the drawing, right? Um, so because your keys are really more like guideposts, and you know, then your breakdown really is the drawing that defines the snappiness from pose to pose, and also defines the variance in how, and you know, the sort of the variance in how you get from pose to pose. So it makes the animation a lot more interesting and textured. So definitions kind of change, but anyways, we have our timing charts, or our spacing charts, in between charts, whatever you want to call it. And so now we can start animating our ball. So let's go ahead and, following our timing charts, let's animate our ball. So I'm going to put down my pen, and I'll do another save. So I'll say save scene as, and I'll call this 06. Okay. And let's go ahead and grab our, we'll start with our ball. So I'm going to, over in my node view, I've got my ball master peg. So here's my ball master, and I'm going to stage my bouncing ball, my ball master. I'm going to stage it. So I'll hit Shift T. Okay, Shift T with my ball master peg selected, and I'll move it into place and scale it. Okay, so I'll scale it holding Shift. So I'm going to move my ball into place, so it's roughly like that. Okay, that's about right. That's about right. Okay, so that's there. Okay. So now, you know, we won't worry about our shadow for now. We're just going to leave that where it is. We'll do that later. So now I'll move my node view down to my move peg and my squash and stretch peg, because I no longer want to be using my master ball peg. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, this is really important, I want you to open up your timeline until you can see your move peg and your squash and stretch peg, but I actually just want you to have your move peg open. So I don't want you to be able to see your squash and stretch peg for now. So collapse it, and you're just going to be animating on your move peg. Okay, so you can see that, your move peg there, but make sure that your move peg has been collapsed, because when we go to set keyframes, one thing I want to see is that you folks have keyed everything on your, from your move peg down. Okay, not your ball master, but your move peg down. Okay, so you're going to be keying, you're going to be setting keyframes on your move peg, making sure that it's collapsed. Because if your move peg is not collapsed and you're setting keyframes, if I hit F6, you can see it only sets a keyframe on the move peg. Well, I want you to have set keyframes on every peg. So not just your move peg, but your squash and stretch peg. So if I come here and I delete that by saying F7, if I collapse this and I set a keyframe by hitting F6, you can see when I open up the timeline, or when I uncollapse that, it's now set a keyframe on the move and the squash and stretch peg. So make sure that you're setting keyframes on everything by making sure that your move peg is collapsed. Okay, so make sure it's collapsed. Okay, first thing we're going to do with our rig is we want to extend the exposure of the rig to frame 120. So I'm going to go to my, the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to go to the topmost peg to extend the exposures. You can see if I click on frame 2, the ball disappears. Well, I need it to show up for all of my 120 frames. So on my master peg, I'm going to go to frame 120, and on frame 120, I'm going to click that frame, and again, on my master peg, I'm going to go to frame 120 and say F5 to expose my ball. is not working here. Okay, hang on a second. My ball highlight, all of these things. Another way I can do this. Oh! No, that's right. So if I go to my ball mask and my ball highlight, so just hang on a second. So all of these layers, I can grab all of these like this. So I can go to frame 120 and I can actually just click and drag and hit F5 to expose those, and then the ball layer as well, I can expose that by hitting F5. Okay, so I'll just do that. I'll just make sure that these are all exposed. Okay, so with that done, I'll collapse all of this again. Alright, so I can now see my ball for all of those frames. Alright, that's important. So, I have my ball exposed, very good. So I'm going to click my move peg, okay? And I'm going to set a key with my move peg collapsed. I'm going to set my first keyframe on frame 1 by hitting F6, okay? So now the ball is set in this position. Awesome. Alright, so now I'm going to go to frame 9. And you can see that here's our second keyframe, our second key drawing, and I'm going to move my ball down to that position until it's just touching on the bottom line, okay? And, you know, it'll set a keyframe on its own, but if it doesn't, you can hit F6 to set a key, okay? So that's there. So I used my move peg to set that there. But again, in my node view, I can now come into my squash and stretch peg, okay? After I've set my key here, I can come to my squash and stretch peg and I can select it, and I can fine-tune the pose with my squash and stretch peg, like that. So I'll set that there, okay? And I can hit key again. So now my ball drops. I've got that second key set properly, okay? Now I'm going to come to frame 17 on the timeline, and I'm going to set a key there, okay? And using my move peg now, making sure I've got my move peg selected, I'm going to move it up, okay? My ball in place. And then I'm going to select my squash and stretch peg over here. And I can go up to my coordinate and control panels, points panel. And then under scale, I can reset my scales to 1 on my ball so that it goes back to its uniform shape. And then I can grab my move peg again to reposition it properly. Okay. Alright. Truthfully, what I could have done was just copy this frame to this frame, but I just want you fellows and you folks to know that you can, you know, grab the squash and stretch peg and come up to the coordinate control points, and you can reset those scales for your squash and stretch peg. Okay. Okay. So let's play our animation. Boom, boom. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so now let's start. Let's start in betweening, because you know we don't really need any breakdowns here. We could just do straight in betweens to cushion nicely into our poses. So I'm going to introduce you to a handy trick called the click and drag method that allows you to do, so I'm just going to zoom in on the timeline here. This allows you to do really accurate in-betweening that's actually quite fast using it's a cutout animation technique. And it's basically a method where we can click and drag frames on the timeline to create easing from pose to pose. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that works. Right now, if I take my keys and I tween these, okay, so I'm going to come to frame 1, and if I want to tween everything from frame 1 to frame 17, I will shift click from frame 1 to frame 9, and I can either set the set motion keyframe here, or I can say Control K. I usually just like to say Control K. So I'm going to tween that, and then I'm going to play the animation. So you'll see the animation is tweening that, and it kind of looks like garbage because A, there's no easing, and B, I'm not controlling the squash and stretch, so the ball is beginning to squash before it hits the ground. I don't want that. So we need to go in and we need to tell Harmony not to do that, and we need to take more control of our animation. And one thing that artists have a problem doing a lot is they don't use the animation software as what it's meant to be, which is a tool, okay? But you should always be animating with traditional animation principles in mind, meaning that you want to have as much control over the performance as possible. You don't want Harmony tweening everything for you because it's just going to look robotic and garbage. Okay, so you need to keep control over performance. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add easing to this, you know, and then we can tell Harmony not to do the bouncing a little bit later. So we'll ease everything by adding the click and drag method. So right now you can see that, you know, we've tweened it, which is great. And if I come to my first keyframe and I click this button here called Set Ease for multiple parameters to look at my graph editor, you can see my graph editor. We'll get into graph editors a little bit later, but you can see it doesn't have any easing on it. Okay, there's no easing on it on any of these keyframes. There's no easing. Okay, it's just a straight linear motion. Okay, it's linear. There's no curve to this, which means there's no easing of the variance in the velocity as it goes from keyframe to keyframe, but we're going to create that by using a click and drag method. So I keep talking about the click and drag method. So what is it? Well, it's basically a way that you can compress time by clicking and dragging keyframes onto the timeline. So the way it works is, if you have a keyframe here, and you can see we've got a key on frame 1 and a keyframe on frame 9, and we want to create halves spacing between 1 and 9. Okay, so basically we want in between on halves. What we do is we find halfway exactly on the timeline. And I should mention though, you've got to be working on 2s, okay? So you want to have enough frames to find half. That's the best way for this to work accurately. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, there's half, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's the other side. Okay, so half. So if I click and drag from halfway, now I'm going to turn on onion skin as well so I can see. If I click and drag from halfway over, what that does is it starts to create keyframes. So again, I'll find halfway, click and drag over, find halfway. Okay, well I'm half here, so I gotta click and drag this way. But you can see that it creates key drawings. Okay. All right. So it created an easing automatically. All right. So if I want to ease into a pose, or ease, let's say I wanted to have my, if I wanted to ease into a pose, there's this ease, let's say I wanted to ease out of this, I would click and drag away from it. Okay, so I'm going to find halfway. Okay, so I've got my two keys. I'm going to find halfway, which is right here, and I'm going to click and drag it to the right until I drag it to the frame on 2s closest to the second key. Okay, and then I'm going to find halfway again, so I'll find halfway between these. So here's half, click, drag. So there's on 2s. Remember, I'm working on 2s. I don't want to drag it to the 1's position, I want to drag it to the 2's position. Okay, find halfway. Now I'm already, I can't click and drag this to the 1's position. Okay, so if I'm here, I can just come to the one, I can just come one frame over and then just drag that there, and that'll work just fine. And you can see that it created an easing on halves. Okay, so so it nicely eased that, and that is halves spacing. If I wanted to create, if I drew my timing charts on thirds spacing, I would find 1/3 depending on where I'm favoring and drag it from there. Okay, so we're working on halves spacing. So I'll come to the other side, I'll find half, click and drag, find half. Okay, so I'm halfway in between, click, drag, and find half. So I'm already at half, so I'll come over one and click and drag it this way. Okay, and then we'll just play. Turn off onion skin. Alright, and there you go. And that's halves spacing, exactly. If you drew out your frames and you actually in between these, it would be right on halves. So, you know, there you go. Alright, so halves spacing. So now what we need to do is we need to clean up our bounce. So, you know, I actually don't want the ball to bounce or have this contact position until later. So here, you know, I can come into my squash and stretch peg here, and I can set this to 1. Whoops, 1. Okay, I can come here. Right. And I actually might leave a little bit of a squash here, depending. But I think I'm gonna get rid of that squash too. Okay. Okay. And I'll do the same for here. On this frame, I don't want the ball to be squashing here, so I'll clean that up. In this frame, I don't want the ball to be squashing there, so I'll clean that up. Okay, so let's play this again. Not bad, not bad. Okay, so one thing, I want to ask you something. What is wrong with this? Well, when I look at this, you know, it's great. It's not bad. It's a good start. But when I look at this, down at the bottom of the action's happening so fast that I'm getting a little bit of what we call in traditional animation chattering. Okay, so even though this is playing on 1s, I'm getting a bit of a chatter at the bottom here because it's just too fast for our eye to pick it up. Okay, so when you're animating traditionally, you know, it's creating a chattering effect that I don't like. So really what should be happening one frame before the ball hits, I actually want the ball to be like just sort of stretching on me quite a bit. So on ones, so this is the drawing that this is what the tweening is doing. Is the tweening is saying, okay, and this is what I mean by don't let the software control what your performance is doing, because you need to take control as the actor with the pencil, as the animator. You need to tell the software what to do. So the software is just saying, in between here and here, well, I'm just going to put a straight in between, and it's just going to interpolate what's happening in between without you controlling it. But here, I want the ball on ones. So we're going to do this on ones. So on the frame in between here, I want a smear drawing that's going to be just like this, and I'm actually going to reset the scale of the squash and stretch to 1, and I'm going to actually make the ball have a stretch like this. Not so much, a little bit less. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to copy this to the other frame. This. Okay. Okay, so let's just take a look at how that feels. Let's see how that feels. Okay. Yeah. See, I like that much better. Okay. Now, it looks a little chattery because the reason that is because everything is on ones. It's, you know, we need to turn this into, you know, sort of like have a more textured feel. And texture is important when you're animating something, because like how your eye perceives how something is moving is going to be important in this, you know, the aesthetic. This is where we get into the aesthetics of animation, you know. So I want to turn this on to 2s, okay, because we are animating on 2s for this assignment. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to click from frame 1 to frame 17, and I'm going to say Control L, and what that's going to do is it's going to put everything on 2s, and then we'll get a nice traditional animation texture to our ball bounce. Nice, right? So what else would this maybe need? You know, the ball, as it's coming, as I'm looking at this, as it's coming up, you know, you could maybe argue that at the ball's apex, it could have a tiny bit of squash and stretch as it's coming up. So we could just ever so just change the ball's positioning just a little bit on that apex, and I'll copy and paste this to the back as well, right? So it's just got a little bit of that, right? So right, because forms are compressing and expanding and contracting, right? Yeah, I like that. Right? There's a real sense of weight. Okay? There's a real sense of weight. And we got that nice smear drawing just 1 frame before the ball hits. And it really creates a nice aesthetic, because we have, you know, we have a nice texture. Our texture is kind of consistent. We're using a small portion of the fastest part of the animation on ones to really sell that snappiness to the contact. So there's a good sense of weight, and that's something that I'd like to see in your exercise, is a good sense of weight in your animation performance with this, because the bouncing ball really is an exercise that's supposed to explore gravity, weight. So yeah, so good job. That is a solid bouncing ball, and you know, we'll stop this one, and you know, we'll do another one after this that's a little more fun. Maybe we'll have the ball bounce across the screen and we'll add the shadow in. And you do have to add your shadow in, so have your shadow. So actually, you know, we'll animate that. We'll animate the shadow. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? Okay, so ground shadow master. I'm going to grab my ground shadow master here, and I'll place it in to my scene, holding shift and clicking. Okay. And I'll place my ground shadow, like I'll make it smaller maybe or something like that. So as it goes up, it's a little bit smaller. Okay. And so my ball is like in place. So if it's here, and then my shadow, my ball is there, right? Okay. So here's my ground shadow master. It's scaled properly in place. So I'll key my ground shadow move here. Oh, and I need to always remember you got to extend those frames. So go to frame 120, ground shadow master. Okay. And ground shadow. I'll extend my ground shadow. Okay, so that's there. So my ground shadow move can just so I'll move my shadow master down so that it's in the right place. So yeah, something like that. And then this is here. And there we go. And I can set my ground shadow move key. Sorry, I don't want to be keying on my master, so ground shadow move. Okay, so ground shadow move. I'm going to grab the move and copy, and I'll paste that frame there. Okay. Alright, so hold Alt, and we'll just play this. Okay, that looks good. And I can just tween these actually, so Control K to tween that, and right. You know, and in fact, I mean, maybe we should just keep the scale, because it's then we're gonna have to animate, you know, then we're gonna have to animate the variance of the scale to match, and you know that it looks so linear right now, right? That just looks weird because it's just the problem is that there's no easing between those. So I mean, like we could try and we could try and ease this actually. So find halfway and find halfway. So see how that. Yeah, it's not bad. But it still looks a little, you know, it's not bad. Yeah. Oh, that's why. Because we need to set our ones position. Right? That smear is important to sell. Okay. So maybe this will be better. Yeah. Right. So then we'll turn off our, where's my animation? Anim. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Okay. Right. And then we can also, right, put that onto 2s as well. Okay, so you should be working on 2s. Right. I actually think I like it better without it on, without the 1s position here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll have this, and if you are doing your bouncing ball, if you're going to do a bouncing ball that's just like this, I need you to have it cycle for 5 bounces. So on your timeline, I would like you to take your, so what you're going to do if you want to cycle it is you're going to take the frames from your second position over, so this, not the first frame, don't take the first frame, take this, the second frame, and copy frame, basically you want to copy frames 3 to 17. So select frames 3 to 17 by shift clicking. You're going to say Control C and then come to the next frame on 2s and Control V. Okay, and that's what that's going to do, is it's going to create a perfect transition. Okay, and then you can just paste that, like, you know, 5 or so times. So come over here, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V. So let's see how many bounces that gives us, and we'll set our we're going to set our stop frame to 120 now. Okay, so let's see how many frames that gives us. So if we're in the timeline view, let's see how many bounces that gives us. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's 6 bounces. So that's fine for me. Same thing with your shadow. So come down here. Okay, so I'm going to grab from frame 3 to frame 17, and I'm going to say Control C, Control V, and, you know, paste that a few times, like so, and that should be enough. So we'll play that. Okay, so play that. 4, 5, 6. Okay, good. 5 bounces, please, minimum. Okay. There you go. And you also need your name written on the assignment. So you can come in here and we can, we'll just, I mean, really you can use the brush tool, it's fine too. I don't, it's mine. I don't mind. Let me see, just create another drawing layer. Drawing. I'll call this name 1. That's fine. Whoops. Make sure that you're on, like, you're not, you know, somewhere like in here. Just, you can click on chart or whatever. You can just go to the brush tool and create a new name 1. Yeah, so just, you can select one of your drawing layers and then name 1, but don't select one of your pegs and add it, so because that'll just create a drawing under one of your pegs and you don't want that. So name 1, and you know, I'll just go to my brush tool. Brush tool hotkey is Alt B, and color, we can use BG line, is fine. And I'll just call this, I'll put my name up here so it's sort of out of the way, so I'll call this Brad McLeod Ball. Okay. Please have your name written on the background. It can be on the name layer if you want, that's fine. I don't care. Okay, and yeah, just extend. Whoops. Just make sure it's extended for you know, a nice duration. So right. Okay. Just make sure you can see it on the background. All right. So checklist. You have a bouncing ball. All right. It bounces 5 times. It is on 2s, okay? You have used the click and drag method that I showed you, okay? So there's the click and drag method. I want to see timing charts, okay? Okay, so your timing charts, and your timing charts match the spacing of your drawings, okay? So if you're gonna in between on halves, you need to be clicking and dragging from the halfway point, okay? Alright, so you have your bouncing ball, you have your background, you have your name written, okay? And you got your timing charts, okay? And you've got a lovely bouncing ball with good weight, okay, good performance that bounces for a minimum of 5 bounces, please and thank you. Make sure it bounces 5 times, okay? Alright. Very good. So, now, we're gonna export our movie, okay? So, let's go up to, first of all, I'll do a save as. So, I'll do a save. So 07. Alright. And I'm going to go to File, Export, Movie. Okay. And you want QuickTime Movie. Okay. QuickTime Movie, MOV. We're going to select our folder. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to find Brad bouncing ball assignment. Alright, so you can save it in here. It would be nice if you created a new folder and said you could say output is fine. Okay, so just create a folder and you can put it in that, and you could say Brad McLeod ball, or your name, ball 1. Okay, you don't have to index your QuickTime movie. Just say your first name, last name, ball 1. Okay, that is how I'd like you to save it. And make sure that the width is set to, the resolution is set to 960 by 540, which is half HD. So half of screen resolution. You can say custom as well, and you can type the values in, but please make sure that it is 960 by 540. Okay, and then you should be good. All right, so you can say okay. It'll render all of that out, and then we can go and we can find our Brad Beebe assignment, and here we go. If I play this, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 bounces. Look at me. Okay, play it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, very good. All right, so you have a bouncing ball. So maybe in the next video, maybe we'll do something a little more interesting. So we'll try another bouncing ball with maybe a different path, and maybe we'll have it come in and bounce off the, the wall or something, or do something like that. Okay, but good job so far. You've done great, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ta for now.